Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. So we will get started with Speak Out. So if anyone has anything to say for Speak Out, you can either just raise your hand or unmute yourself. So yeah.
Can we do announcements? Would you mind doing announcements and introductions first? Do you mind?
Oh yeah.
Know who folks are.
Do we want to go around and?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay, so I guess I'll just call on folks. Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm from Ward 8. I use she, her pronouns. I will pass it over to Tom.
Hi, my name's Tom. I'm in Ward 1. I live on Nash Place.
Why don't we do it like popcorn style so each person picks someone else?
Okay, Jonathan.
Oh, that was easy. Hi, I'm Jonathan Chappell-Sokol. I'm in Ward 1 Steering Committee. I live on North Prospect Street. Daniel.
Hi there, I'm Dan. I also live in Ward 1 on Chase Street. I'll pass it to Carol.
Hi, Daniel. I'm Carol Livingston. I live on Calarco Court, which is off Colchester Avenue in Ward 1, and I'm also on the steering committee. Jim.
Okay, I'm Jim Barr. I live on Chase Street in the Old East End. I work at UVM. I'm a DBW commissioner, and I will pass it to Sophie.
I am Sophie Quest, and I also live on Chase Street in the Old East End, and I'll turn it to Gail.
Hi, I'm Gail Shampnois with the Office of Student and Community Relations. Great to see you, Sophie, and everyone. And I work at the UVM Office of Student and Community Relations. And I will pass it to Jack.
Hey everyone, Jack Hansen, East District City Councilor, use he, him pronouns, and I live on College Street in Ward 8. I will pass to Zariah.
Zariah, she, her. I live on Hildred Drive off of Riverside Ave. I'm the Ward 1 City Councilor. And I guess I'm going to start calling on people who aren't on camera. Or Karen, you haven't gone yet, have you? And you're on mute.
Hi, thanks. Karen Long, I live on Henry Street and have been there since, I think, 1983. Thank you. I'll call on Sandy, my buddy.
I'm not have my video on because I'm doing a lot of other things, but I will be listening attentively.
I'll pass it to Linda or Sandy. Okay, I guess we'll go to Joe then.
Hey y'all, Joe Spidell, UVM. He, his pronouns. I live on Ward Street in Ward 3. I've been in Burlington since 1994. And I don't know who to pass it to, Hannah. Maybe you can say.
Yeah, I think we have Glenn and Holly are the last folks.
Yep. Hi, I'm Holly. There's Glenn. We live on Mansfield Avenue. We've been in Ward 1 since 2000, I guess in 2007 we got here.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
And we'll pass it to whoever.
Okay. Now, any announcements? Carol or any other folks?
Yeah, I think we wanted to let folks know that the steering committee is taking a break from organizing the NPA meetings for July and August. So our next meeting will be in September. Who knows if we'll continue doing it in this format or if we will be in person, we'll let you know. So hopefully middle of August, we'll be making another announcement on Front Porch Forum and asking for input for the meeting, et cetera. But we're gonna take a good bit of the summer as a break. Any questions about that, please feel free, but I think we're needing a break. And again, anyone who is interested in being part of steering or would like to just sit in on some meetings and see what that's like, we would welcome to have you. It'd be great to have you just see what it's like. Thank you.
Okay, now we can go to speak out. So as I said, you can either like visibly raise your hand or wait to unmute yourself until the last person has talked. I see Karen, your hand is raised.
Thank you. I just wanted to, well, we've written, or I know my husband wrote Jack and Zariah. Jane, I don't think he included you, but I wanted to alert the neighborhood and our city councilors again about 12 Weston Street. It was the single family house with an accessory apartment that was converted to a duplex. Golly, it's been several years now that we've had this in litigation, and it's coming up again. And Norm Williams has handled it for us pro bono. The city doesn't seem like, at least we haven't heard from them. I don't know if they are going to appeal to the Supreme Court, but the problem is it does not have the parking for a duplex. It has one parking space. It doesn't have the lot size to have been converted to a duplex. It has 7 or 8 students living in it every year. And it was a, sorry for the noise, single family house with an accessory unit for 37 years. Mrs. Gadju lived there, and the little unit upstairs was a studio apartment for their bookkeeper for Gadju's dry cleaning. She lived there 28 years. And when the landlord purchased this, he switched it up and he made it more 2 equal units. And like I said, it has become a kind of a compound of this 2 student rentals side by side that this landlord owns. There are 17 kids that live there every year, and it is a problem. And I didn't mention that this is the last single family house on Weston Street. And our municipal plan, this is directly against it, because the municipal plan says the city will encourage the reversion to single family occupancy of properties, especially in areas within high concentrations of student rental housing, which have been converted to multi-unit dwellings. So this has just gone on, and I would really like to see the city stand by our zoning and try to win this. I think we have a really good chance. We won already once with the Supreme Court. And it's really disappointing to me that the city does not hold its zoning, hold the landlords accountable and just go by the rule. Or you guys have to take this to the ordinance committee and change the rules, because it's very frustrating that they're not being enforced. Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything for Speak Out? Okay, the one thing I'll mention is I am the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Board member for Ward 8, and we, a couple months ago, concluded our review of the 2021 applications, and so I wanted to just give you all a brief overview. It was a really unique year, but also exciting, and as all of the grant requests that were given, we were able to fund them all completely, or at least we recommended funding them all completely just because of the amounts worked out. So on the public service applications, the total requested was $150,500, and the grant funds available were the exact same amount, and our group recommended funding those fully. And the same thing with the development applications. The total requested were $232,000, and the grant funds available were the exact same as well. So if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to shoot me an email or call me, and I'm happy to talk through it all, but that's kind of the review on all of that. Last call for Speak Out.
Hey, Hannah, could you put the link to the report in for Tom to put in the minutes?
Yeah, I can send that over.
Thanks.
Okay, so moving on is we're going to get a UVM update from Gail. So thank you, Gail, for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I first want to say how grateful I am to everyone, to neighbors, to landlords, to the city officials and staff, and to the institutions, all of our on and off campus partners, for all that we went through during this pandemic. I have appreciated the just people who have told us that, you know, students were doing the right thing in the community, but also letting us know when the green and gold promise wasn't being followed or there were quality of life issues. And I followed up with everything that was sent to my office. So thank you for keeping connected during this time. And I know we had some pretty big challenges with the North Beach. And just to let people know that we've met twice now with the Burlington High School and Burlington School Department and the Parks Department and UVM Police Services and Burlington Police Department. And we've added some students to that group. We met twice and we're going to continue to meet so that we can address those first warm days of the spring and not have a repeat of what had happened this past spring. Also, there were issues on Hickok and Isham and Loomis at the end of the academic year, and we are in contact with the Burlington Police Department to identify any of our students who are involved. And again, the Office of Student Conduct, the Center for Student Conduct will be involved with that. We're going to do a lot more outreach in the next 2 weeks in that neighborhood, talking to people, and I've already checked in with some of the neighbors on Hickok Place. And I feel very unfortunate what happened and during just the stress of all that and the impact that it's had. So we are addressing that. Also want to say that the Community Coalition was virtual this year and we had really good attendance. We had a lot of good energy and a lot of good support coming out of that group. So I've appreciated everybody's involvement. And we also gave out some neighborhood grants. And so working with the Old East End Neighborhood Coalition, and I see Jim and Sophie here, and I know usually Dave and Pat come to these meetings as well. We were able to help support Winterlude. So thank you for bringing comfort to so many residents during the winter, during a difficult time. And we want to continue that partnership in the future with that group. And we are also using some neighborhood grants and some grant money that we got from the New England Seeds grant to do a lot of work on Isham and Hickok according to what neighbors want. So more want planter boxes. They want vegetables, flowers. And so we have a landlord donated community garden on Isham Street, and we'll be doing that work starting now. We wish we could have done more all along, but because of COVID, it was really difficult. But we did a lot of events to bring community together. So we had almost 100% participation in our pumpkin decorating contest. Everybody put the pumpkins out. We did a snow person contest. We have done flyers around issues like backyard fires and containers, and when people were mixing compost with their recycling, and we got really good responses. I find that students do pay attention to flyers on their mailboxes. And afterwards, I checked in with the city staff and they said those problems have been eradicated. So we're finding that during the pandemic, there's things that we learned among the challenges that we want to bring forward. And I wanted to let you know that last summer, we did have a large percentage of our students stay in Burlington for a lot of good reasons that they share with us in our survey. This summer, we're finding we again have a lot of students that are staying. And so in this survey, which is usually what we do is our spring move out survey, we try to find out when students are moving out in May so that we can plan our spring move out project events. This year we did two, one on Loomis Street and one on Buell. Unfortunately, with COVID, we could only make it a trash event and not the recycling because we couldn't have people gather. But I could tell you it was a lot more came in than in another year because we didn't charge for trash this year. Next year, we're going to go back to both trash and recycling and get back into how we used to do the event. With the information about this summer, we had 492 responses to our survey for off-campus students, and 66% of them are renting in Burlington for the summer. And then we asked, are they living in the same rental? And 49% said yes. And the reasons why: affordable rent, good location, good landlord, convenience, good living situation. And it felt really good to read those responses. I think the convenience part is something we have talked to code enforcement and Bill Ward and Patty Weeman about, is that difficulty where you have to leave your apartment 3 or 4 days before you can get into your new apartment. So people don't know where to store stuff. Some landlords are kind enough to let them store the big furniture. Others scramble. Some are, trying to find places, friends with couches that they could stay with. What we don't want to see happen is because of convenience, if they're in a bad landlord situation, they choose to stay there because of that. So we're going to be working really hard on that issue. And I'm so appreciative of all the support that code enforcement has given around some of these issues, including all their support for spring move out. We also asked if students were planning to sublet. 91% are not subletting. So that's something also that's interesting to us. There used to be a lot more subletting in the past. We asked if they had summer employment, and the good news is that 75% of the respondents do have summer employment. And of that, 68% have it in Burlington. So I know when I've been out and about at restaurants and other places, a lot of jobs are opening up. A lot of students are finally finding that they can have employment. That's been a real stress for them. We found huge percentage of them rent, food, and utilities insecure throughout the pandemic, and offered a lot of resources support, including dropping food off door to door to students. I think we did 4 runs of that, and also all the incredible local and national and federal and UVM and state resources were enormously helpful. City's resource and recovery team and site was phenomenal, and I thank them for all the support that they gave. And then we had 21% have internships, and of that group, 57% of them have internships in Burlington. So I know last summer was rough on a lot of residents. I had a lot of calls about the Green and Gold Promise, quality of life issues. A lot of people were out of work, were home. A lot of our students were still in the community. I think the difference this summer is, as I see from our data, a lot of students will be here. A lot of them will be working and have internships. And we will continue as an office to respond to communications that we get from neighbors and from students about issues that come up for them. We've been working really well with landlords. When I've contacted landlords, when there have been issues, we gave them flyers and posters to put up and about COVID regulations, and they put them up. They talked to their tenants. I think we had a really good sense that the whole community was pulling together. And we hope that those relationships we've built and the way that we were able to be effective in addressing some of the issues is something that, again, we can bring forward. So that's my presentation. I know that we will be opening for the fall, and I know there may be lots of questions about that. So I think the Ward 18 NPA sent out a link so that you can keep up with what's going on at UVM. And at some point in time, maybe your September meeting, have someone come in and give an update. But certainly as new information comes in, if you check that website, and if you have any questions, there'll be contact people there. And I know Joe Spidella and myself would be happy to, and also Lisa Kingsbury, to answer any questions that you have. And if we're not the right resource, because we're not making the decisions around the fall opening, we will get you to the right resource.
Okay, great. I see, Tom, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Gail, could you send me a link to the webpage you just talked about?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Anyone have any questions for Gail?
Can I
Gail,
just
thank you so much for your work. Sorry, Jack.
I think
Joe.
Joe was also trying to get in. So
Joe, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted
wait.
to. Oh, thanks, Jack. I just wanted to add, that Gail and her office has just done an amazing job this year, and really responded to, so many requests in a really challenging year. I just wanted to appreciate the work that they've done, but also the work that code enforcement has done, as Gail had said, and our partners in the city and on the city council. So just really appreciate all of that.
no, I also just wanted to appreciate, Gail, your really great work and diligence. And it's very clear, I think, to all of us that it's not just a job for you. Your heart is in it, and you care so much about the community. So we really appreciate that. And also the community coalition meetings, I think, have been really, really great, and would encourage folks on this call and anyone who watches this to try to attend community coalition. I don't know if the dates are posted for future meetings, but they're typically have been on Fridays, and just bringing together students and code enforcement and community members. We've had some really interesting and great conversations and working groups and ideas that have flowed through that group. So it's a really great space.
Thank you, Jack. And we usually wait till the new co-chair has their academic schedule because they're from the Student Government Association, and then we'll have the meeting dates, but I'm happy to send them out. I appreciate it.
That would be great. That would be great. I'm wondering, as we think about September and October, if it makes sense for that crew to think about presenting to the NPA, because I think we'd really love to hear, what their thinking is and their plans are. So it's just another avenue for them to share their information.
Excellent. And if you want to just be on my mailing list, I send out notes if you can't make meetings, because I know Friday afternoon, we choose that because it's the one the students are most able to do.
Sure.
The notes will at least let you know what we're up to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gail. Now we are moving on to the city council update. So whoever wants to go first, feel free.
I think I was asked to give a public safety update, so it may make sense if I start, if that's okay with Jack and Jane. And along those lines, could somebody allow me to screen share? Because I have a presentation. If not, that's also okay.
Just made you co-host, so you should be able to screen share.
Thank you so much. Great. So this is a presentation that I gave just to give at City Council an update. That's not what I meant to do. I'm trying to share, trying to present. So I'm just going to give it here again, and then I added a few things at the end just to walk through what is happening beyond the Joint Committee. I'm clearly most familiar with what the Joint Committee has been doing just because I'm the chair of the Joint Committee, but happy to do some other updates at the end as well. And this shouldn't take more than 5 to 7 minutes. And so just so folks know, the Joint Committee was a committee that was formed by the Racial Justice Resolution last June. And we've had varying members coming through. It's composed of the City Council's Public Safety Committee as well as the Police Commission. And so as people have left those committees and commissions, we've gotten new members and lost members. And the timeline was the committee was created in on June 29th with a resolution, the Racial Justice Resolution. And just to walk through kind of what the committee has done is we didn't meet until August 14th because we needed a staff person. We approved, so our goal really was to have a community input process for public safety and what the vision around that is and should be, as well as an assessment of the Burlington Police Department. So our goal was to have 2 different RFPs for that. And then we also discussed some other topics, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And so we prioritized the community input RFP because we thought that one should have formed the BPD assessment. So we finalized that RFP end of August. In September, we started drafting the second RFP, which is, a request for proposal. So that's kind of the announcement that you put out asking consultants to engage in this work. September 24th, the city posted the first RFP. Again, that's the community facilitator one. October 22nd, we selected Talitha Consultants out of 3 different consulting firms to move forward with due diligence. October 26th, we approved them as the consultants. On November 5th, we approved the second RFP for posting. On December 3rd, we had our first call with Talitha Consultants, but we didn't have a contract with them yet, so we couldn't actually ask them to do any work. And then in December 22nd, we selected CNA for due diligence to fulfill that second request for proposals. And then in 2021, We did a reference check for CNA, and January 15th, we still didn't have a contract with Talitha, which I think you'll notice we approved them October 26th. So it had been kind of a longer, slower process. But we kicked off with them February 1st. And then as an aside, this isn't quite just helping with the time a little bit. February 9th, the City Council approves 10 new community service officers and 1 new CSL. So that's outside of the joint committee. February 22nd, we had another check-in with Talitha, and they, over the rest of that week, had their first meetings with organizations. March 15th, we still didn't have the CNA contract because there was a debate over who would manage it that had been kind of ongoing in the background. March 30th was the first Talitha Town Hall. April 27th was the second. We kicked off with CNA on April 8th. And then early May, I think it was May 10th, maybe May 9th, the Talitha survey launched, and they just closed it earlier this week. So where we are now, which I haven't completely updated, is Talitha just closed the survey, I think last week, for public safety visioning, and CNA is currently, I think, finalizing conducting interviews and are kind of at the same time also doing analysis of what that means and doing data requests in the Burlington Police Department and analyzing that as well. And so just to remember that the Talitha scope of work was to answer a key question, which was how to build a healthy and safe community and what institutions we need to reach that goal. They designed a feedback mechanism, which is both workshops and surveys, and they facilitated that. And then their reporting will be happening over the month of June. And they're supposed to draft a strategy for effective community input to transition to a different public safety model. And this is kind of the whole Talitha timeline compact. The report out, the first report out, is supposed to be June 23rd at the joint committee meeting at 5:30. And then they will have a written report by the end of June, which I believe is when their contract ends. For CNA, their scope of work was to create a roadmap that supports methodical transition to a new innovative public safety apparatus that delivers valued community services, and to examine and reevaluate public safety needs in Burlington and reassess the role of BPD in promoting public safety. And so their key question was, how does what the community desires compare with who, what, where, and how BPD is providing public safety, reevaluate the public safety needs, and re-examine the role of BPD. And then the end result is supposed to be a menu of city services to add or enhance, analysis of the benefits and barriers of those alternatives, and a framework for decision-making for the community and the council and the mayor to move forward with. And the timeline is here, with us currently being in data collection, and their final report out, I believe, is supposed to be late summer, but I'm not 100% sure of the exact date. Other items taken up by the committee was review of the oversight model and the equitable sharing program. We didn't make it very far, and I mean, the review of the oversight model was then passed to the police commission, and ultimately that ended up not going through the council, as most of you know. And the equitable sharing program, we just haven't really made many inroads, not least because it's really hard to get data on what the equitable sharing, what has actually been shared, and how much and with whom and when. Other public safety items, sorry, I just took notes for myself, that I'm aware of is the SRO task force, which was composed of students, Burlington School Department staff and principals, CJC representative, myself. We completed our work early this year and published a report, which I think many of you have probably seen or skimmed. We just started meeting again this month, and we'll continue to meet on a monthly basis going forward, to to make sure that the recommendations that were in the report are put into action. And those aren't public meetings. So if somebody was hoping to join them, we do have notes that I'm willing to share, but we're not a public group. I think you all, there was enough news about this, but Kyle Dotson left as Director of Police Transformation with not, I think, the hoped for report that we were hoping in terms of potentially having some advice on changes. NACOL is doing a series of trainings for police commissioners and any city councilors who want to join, and the public is invited as well. And NACOL is a great institution that does a lot of work on policing and alternatives and policies. So I think if you're interested in these topics, I think it's that those trainings are going to be really informative. There is a public safety meeting, so that's just the 3 people on the city council, not the joint committee, which has those police commissioners as well. Next Thursday, we're going to talk about 2 community service liaison positions, 2 additional outside of the police department, and what those positions should be doing. So if you have input or thoughts on that, feel free to share that with us. And then the last thing is if for folks who remember the community oversight resolution that was vetoed by the mayor earlier this year, there's a community process to have a similar oversight model that on the ballot through petition. And so that is kind of ongoing, and they have a website. I think they've made some good changes to the language that was in the previous resolution. So sorry, I think that was longer than I said it would be, but that is everything I know about public safety. Small update, I think I will be leaving the Public Safety Committee once, so we'll talk, another council will talk about that, but once we have the Ward 3 election. So I hopefully will not be the face of public safety anymore in a few months. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, do we want to do questions for Zariah now, and then we'll go to the other counselors? Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Tom, your hand is raised.
Yeah, Zariah, can I get a copy of your presentation?
Absolutely. It should also be on the city website, but I can make sure the NPA gets their own PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions for Zariah? Okay, seeing none. Jane or Jack, whoever wants to go.
I don't mind hopping in. Thanks, Zariah, for that presentation. I know you've had to do it a few times. So the last 2 meetings I had mentioned that my goal as a city councilor was to get more funding for NPAs, one of many goals. And luckily, it seems like we actually might have locked in $500 extra per NPA in the next year on top of the normally allocated budget. So I'm kind of happy about that. Obviously, we always want more, but I think that's a good place to start, better than nothing. Let's see what else. So the council voted to authorize BED to raise their rates 7.5% for the fiscal year of 2022. This was in the news, is pretty heavily covered, but this is like the first rate increase in like 12 years. They do have some low income assistance programs kind of rolling out, and they're working through some of those details. But yeah, I have some more information too if folks want that. And then on another front, Brian Pine, the Ward 3 seat is open because Brian Pine, Councillor Pine, moved into the CEDO director position. That is something that obviously he's very passionate about, and we're really happy for him. But so I'm sure we all kind of know that happened, but I just want to make sure if anybody on this call wasn't aware of that. We now have 11 councillors until the special election in August. And let's see what else. Oh, on June 19th, on Saturday, Juneteenth, there will be our first ever celebration as a city for Juneteenth, and it'll be located at like several locations. So like City Hall Park, the Echo Center down at the water, Fletcher Free Library, and a lot more information about it is at juneteenthbtv.org. So that's something to keep in mind because that's our first ever one. So we just want to put that on folks' radar. And yeah, I do have some dates for committee stuff, but they're also on committees that I believe have already been mentioned or one that Jack chairs. So I'll just hand it over to him at this point. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Yeah, a couple other things to hit. So yeah, the council has had 2 meetings since the NPA met. So at the May meeting, the late May meeting, couple other things we did. We unanimously passed a resolution around youth on boards and commissions. This has been an effort for a while in the city to have youth representatives, folks under 18, serving on our boards and commissions to really add that voice and that perspective. And it has been, it's had mixed success. And I think we want to kind of double down on it and try to make sure that every board has that voice and that there's a mentor as well. So it's not just throwing a high schooler on the board and kind of just having them try to fend for themselves, but also pairing them up with someone. And so trying to expand that program, make it more successful, more robust. And we also made the final approval of the restructuring of water rates in Burlington. This NPA has gotten a couple presentations on that. I think the department did a really great job. They spent a long time, did a lot of outreach and input, worked really hard to try to create a more equitable system. And I think it's a huge step forward to create, income sensitivity in the rate system and more fairness in how we charge for water. And then at our last meeting, we did also discuss redistricting, which when the census data comes back, it's very likely, we definitely expect that we'll need to redistrict for the wards. And it's not just a matter of shifting geographically what the boundaries of each ward is. It could also include changing the structure, which has happened before. The structure we have now where there's ward counselors and district counselors is pretty new. And I think there's a sense of a lot of counselors that it's maybe not the best system to have that sort of overlapping constituencies and have some counselors with twice as many constituents as others. So there could be, we'll be working on this, but it could be a more fundamental restructuring of kind of the city council, could even potentially change the number of counselors, for example. But this was just an early presentation about it. We didn't take any action at this point. And then at our meeting on Monday night, I had a resolution around this I-89, re-envision I-89 corridor study that the Regional Planning Commission has been working on for over a year. And the City Council voted 10-1 to pass this resolution to really tell the Regional Planning Commission that we want to see them focusing this really, really large study on reducing vehicle miles traveled rather than exploring expansion of car infrastructure like the idea of adding a new interchange and upgrading and improving interchanges. The council would rather see that money go towards how can we actually reduce vehicles miles traveled and create a more sustainable and equitable and affordable transportation system. So that was a resolution that we passed. Another one that we passed on Monday was we did remove the mask mandate for retail establishments. I know the state had already removed that, but Burlington still had not. But now, as of Monday, we have. So it's up to individual businesses whether or not they want to require masks. The city is no longer requiring that for vaccinated people specifically, just to be very clear about that. Masks are not required for vaccinated people unless obviously the business itself does so. I guess the two other things I'll mention, or three, I guess. So the budget, we have to pass a budget by the end of June. That's been a big focus. There's been a ton of meetings. Every single department in the city has presented at this point to the council and taken questions. The mayor is about to submit his budget, and that should happen tomorrow. And the council will start, digging into that on Monday and have the opportunity to either, we could pass it on Monday, we could make amendments, we could postpone action, we could reject it, I guess, theoretically. More to come on that, but that's going to be a big focus this month for the council. And boards and commissions is another thing that the council does every June, is we appoint people to the city's boards and commissions. And I'm on the subcommittee that's been working on that. We have a slate of candidates that we're looking to appoint to these boards that will go to the full city council for a vote on Monday. And shout out to Dan, who's on the call, who this was approved to be on the Public Works Commission, which Jim Barr has been on as well, who maybe dropped off, but So they'll both be representing, Ward 1 and the city as a whole on the Public Works Commission. I think, the last thing I'll mention is, because Jane alluded to this too, Jane and I are on the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee, and we've put together a special meeting next Tuesday regarding solar in Burlington, rooftop solar, and trying to make it easier for people in Burlington to get rooftop solar, because it's been a challenge for many folks due to some of the local requirements around that. This is something we're trying to do in that committee, is have regular special meetings on certain topics. So we had one last month regarding pedestrian safety, and I think a couple of y'all reached out that were sorry to miss it, and I apologize for not, more heavily publicizing it. But this one's coming up on Tuesday night over Zoom. I believe it's at 5 p.m. I can double check that, but it's at 5. So I will leave it there. Thanks.
And I have one update that's not public safety, which is just that with the end of the legislative session, I think most people probably voted on the charter changes that were on the ballot last November? I don't remember. And the legislature did not take up the vast. I think they only took up one of the charter changes. So they are not past this session. They are also seemingly more controversial than in the legislature than the 60+% passage would have made us think. And so I think a big part of when the legislature comes up again, our role, or I know at least my role, will be also advocating for some of those charter changes and working with some of the legislatures to try to make sure that the charter changes we pass get passed by the legislature. So just wanted folks to be aware of that. So if you contact your representatives and senators and let them know that that's an important thing for folks, if it is an important thing for folks.
Definitely. One other quick note is that we just heard from Max Tracy, the city council president, that it's pretty likely that we're going to go back in person for council starting in July. So we'll be reopening Contoy's Auditorium on Church Street, and I'm hoping that it'll still be just as easy to join remotely, but I also think it is exciting to be able to get back together in real life as well.
Does anyone have any questions for the counselors? I see Tom, your hand is raised.
Yeah, Jack, can I get a pointer to the rooftop solar meeting next Tuesday? I'm assuming it's a Zoom meeting?
It is. I don't know that the link is up yet, but I will.
Is this something I should just look at the city council page and find?
There's a particular page for that committee, which is where it'll be. So I will go ahead and just post the link to that webpage. And once that's where this will live. That's where all the agendas are posted, and they're always posted 3 days ahead of the meeting. So you'll see the agenda and materials and the link go up on Friday on this website. So I can go ahead and just share the link to that website. If I do it in the Q&A, does that, or should I just email you, Tom?
Just email me.
Okay. All right. Great.
And I have one other quick question, and that's you talked about restructuring city council potentially. Is it your opinion that the Burlington would be better off with more city councilors or fewer city councilors?
Yeah, and if the others want to give their thoughts too. So I've been working with Karen Paul on one of the Ward 6 city councilor on this, and the NPAs will actually have a role. I should have mentioned that. The way that the resolution is drafted, the NPAs would each elect somebody to or choose somebody to basically serve on a committee that's going to take a look at these issues, Tom, and take a look at what direction that we should go. My personal opinion, I think the number is pretty good in terms of 12. My personal preference would be to do just 12 wards and have councilors have smaller constituencies and have people know, this is your one councilor. And I think it would make it a lot easier for us to be more responsive if we had a smaller constituency and also that it didn't overlap with others. So that's my personal preference. But that being said, we want to set up a process and let this be a kind of community driven effort so that we end up somewhere that, folks can feel good about. And we want to try to achieve, for the most part, consensus among the city council on a direction forward is the hope with this.
Okay, thanks.
Sandy, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, couple of quick things. Jack, when you do the solar, I don't know if everybody knows, but I'm in real estate. I'm actually working with a house right now that has solar. And there are a lot of little hoops and, shall we say, pitfalls. I would definitely involve real estate attorneys because eventually properties do sell, and there's, every company's got different kinds of leases, but it's not a slam dunk, even when the numbers look good for saving on the electric bill. The lease this lady has is 30 pages long. You need to be a lawyer just to read the lease, and they had her just sign it. So just, and there are a lot of different companies, but just a note of caution in my business, when a house has solar panels, the real estate attorneys roll their eyes backwards. There's just a lot of documents and a lot of things that need to be filed, and they're not in public records, et cetera, et cetera. We had a meeting for about an hour the other day, and it was a real eye opener to what the lawyers have to deal with to sell a property. So just a heads up on that.
Great.
And a quick thing, Jack, maybe you know this or anyone else, but I see we got a notice here about the 10-foot wide blacktop driveway that's going to go on the east side of Mansfield Ave from Colchester Ave all the way down, and then just dead end at North Street. It'll cross over where Monte Cristi School is. It'll cross in front of the fire department. I don't even understand the logic of it. I see if you want to have some traffic calming and you want to have the intersection, but have a 10-foot wide blacktop driveway. Basically, I'm calling it a driveway. It will run the length of Mansfield Ave. It really doesn't make sense to me, but maybe I'm missing the big picture.
Yeah, I think that side, I don't think we have anyone from DPW, just looking around, but if anyone wants to weigh in on that, I think that's been on DPW's sort of list for many years, and it's now kind of coming to completion. And I believe one of the main it's meant to be a side path for pedestrians and, folks of all differing abilities, especially with the senior facility on the end of Mansfield, and just trying to create safe and wide walkway and runway for folks jogging and all of that. So I think it was meant to be sort of a wider sidewalk type of thing to accommodate, the movement along there. But I wasn't super involved in it.
Well, the reality is there is a nice bike path on the side, on the road. There's room for the bikes now. A lot of us walk, and we all walk on the side where the houses are, especially in the evening because it's lighter. So walking on the side that's darker generally, isn't as popular. There is a walkway there now, not in great shape, but it is a blacktop one. But to create, there are lots of things that have been on the books for, 50 years. And eventually we come to realize times have changed and it doesn't make sense to move forward with this. And I think if you folks and somebody can sort of slow the train down here and rethink, it would make a lot of sense. Just my 2 cents.
Great. If you could email me, Sandy, both with anyone that you think we should invite to this solar meeting on Tuesday, and as well as with that, I can follow up on both of those things.
Happy to do that.
Thank you. And Jason, I bet, has thoughts on the Side Path project.
Yeah, so if you can hear me, I was involved with this process and when they were doing the study and some of the stuff before that. And the idea is that it's a extension of the Colchester Ave side path, the Riverside Ave side path, the eventual one that's going to go in down to the Intervale. And it's an off-road facility for users of all abilities for all seasons. The bike lane may seem nice on the road for an advanced user, but if you have your daughter in a trailer behind you, it feels less than safe with no protection. And in the wintertime, that lane is often just covered in snow and you have to ride in the road. And so this is just the same thing as the waterfront and everything else, providing an all-use facility there. And it's actually a great location for it because of the number of school children there, the number of seniors that live at the facility there. There's some other schools in the area. And it also connects to the Old North End Greenway, which is a nice path there. So it's really about providing connectivity and a safe off-street passage for everyone. Not everyone feels safe being in the road. And if I try to be on the sidewalk and it's only 5 feet wide, I often have a conflict with someone who's trying to walk or someone trying to bike the other way. But you can feel free to reach out to me on the side, but I believe DPW is looking to do that this year. So, and it's actually in very horrible condition right now, and numerous people have been injured trying to walk on it, and it impacts zero right of way. So,
I guess one of the concerns, Jason, is it ends right at the private roadway that comes out of Macaulay Square there.
I understand that.
And North Street, you can't widen North Street, so it's like a dead end little roadway.
Not necessarily, because people from the senior center can go the opposite direction on there up to the Colchester Ave side path and continue from there. And the idea is also to have an on-street facility for maybe one block, and then on Prospect Street, connect that down to Riverside Ave. So there's that in the plan and in the works long term. So the idea is not to just dead end it there. That's, how all the projects work around here, that small section at a time. It's a little harder to get everything connected up, but it's for eventual connectivity around that entire super block there of Riverside Ave, Prospect, and Colchester to provide off-street facility.
And I take it won't cover up the rain garden that just all got put in there?
I don't think so, but I can't speak to the exact width and specifications there, but I'm, that's a little bit of a concern, but the amount of safety of other users is really a big concern. And I also work on the Walk Bike Council, so I'm very familiar with this issue, and feel free to contact me offline.
Okay. I see Erhard's hand is up.
Hi, thanks. So I had to check out for a couple minutes because I got a phone call, but I had a question. Hopefully you haven't covered this. Jack, you were talking about the census, the preliminary numbers, and possibly, redistricting and even restructuring the city council. Was there any discussion or any information that you received around how the legislative districts might get realigned as a result of the preliminary census numbers? I assume we're gaining some in population. So might it be that at some point Burlington can be kind of whole instead of sharing a portion of Burlington with the Winooski district?
I don't have any advanced intel on that, but that is also simultaneously that redistricting will also be happening, but I don't have any intel on where it's headed.
Great, thanks. Just for background, usually that happens first. It'll probably happen next winter. I don't know what the city council schedule is for redistricting, but if history is any indication, probably you'll be dealing with the legislative districts and redistricting those first.
Yeah, we're looking to accelerate the process compared to last time. Last time it dragged out for 4 or 5 years. We're looking to get something on the ballot actually for March, hopefully, so that the voters could weigh in at that point. But we don't actually have the census data yet from the federal government. So right now we're just trying to set up the process, and you may have missed it, Erhard, but the NPAs are going to play a role in the process, at least how the resolution is drafted right now.
Oh, great. That's great. Yeah.
Each NPA would select someone to work through this.
It was messy the last time because, it was very controversial because of the comprehensive restructuring, and not everybody was a fan of how it ended up.
Right. That's part of the motivation to get ahead of this and start looking at it. I think there's things that we can do a lot better this time.
Thank you.
I think the last question will go to Jonathan.
Thanks, Hannah. This is a question for Jane. Jane, thank you very much for your efforts to support the NPAs. There's so much work I think the NPAs can do that we're not doing right now. One of our problems, and this may just be a Ward 1A problem, but we struggle in how the policy says we're supposed to spend the money. And it seems to be quite restrictive, and it seems to be and this may just be a Ward 1A thing, and other boards may be going off and doing things that we should be doing. But the focus is fairly consistently in the wording on outreach for the NPA. Mm-hmm. And that's fine and that's good. But it seems like we could be, as a community, we can do more than just outreach for the NPA. And we can be creative about it, I suppose. Right. But I'm just wondering whether that's something that could be looked into too, is just expanding the possibilities that we could use money. We'd spend more money if we felt like we were actually following policy by spending it that way.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that is something I actually am looking into, because I realize that it is mostly about outreach, and you can get creative in what that outreach looks like. Right. So it's well, what forms of it, but I understand what you mean. Could it be separate events, but a similar group of people, or is it some other type of special issue that we all want to talk about at a different time or something like that? And just kind of being able to have those types of functionalities and that flexibility and be able to fund that. Other than outreach, I mean, this is a good setting to kind of ask this. Like, other than outreach, what more do you envision doing? Because the more I know, like, what this group wants to accomplish, the more we can try and like change that policy. Because I mean, things can be changed for sure. I just have to know what it's going to be changed to, and it's good to be specific when you really know something specific, what you want to like move into that direction. So is there anything that's on your mind, or is this something we can take offline and make a list of things on top of outreach?
Yeah, probably we should make a list. One thing that pops to mind, and this was a very early conversation that I had on the subject with Sophie, and that was about doing something about the little triangle in the old East End, turning that into more of a park. It's a tiny little place, but that doesn't seem to be fitting with what, that would be a wonderful thing to do for the community. It doesn't seem to be fitting in what the CEDO policy says we're supposed to spend the money on. But that's just an example. I think other places, there's grants that other NPAs may be with what we're supposed to spend the money on. And so it's that sort of thing. It's just kind of opening up the possibility that it's support for the community. It's not necessarily outreach for the NPA.
Right. Because I realize that. No, that makes total sense. Jonathan, I'll look into that then and try and get back to you like shortly on that. I know we're not meeting as a group for the next 2 months, but I can definitely reach out to kind of the steering committee and everybody on what that language actually is and why, and then kind of see where we have that wiggle room. Because I'm sure we do. It's like being clear on what we want to change it to. But that's what we're all here for. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll add on that front, like I think expanding it to be community building based as well, because like we've talked about it before, where like our NPA isn't the most comfortable place for every single person. And as much outreach as you do, it's not, I feel like it's just not always a space that everyone feels comfortable in. And so being able to provide funding to either like affinity spaces to like, in order for us to help them build that community out while having the understanding that this primarily white space is not super comfortable for everyone. Like, I think that would even make it a little easier to spend the funds and also more productive. So then we're not like scrambling at the end to be like, okay, how many more lawn signs can we buy? Like how many things? When like that, like it's not productive to our entire community. But yeah, that was a good point to bring up, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, that I completely agree with that. And I think, that this should be, I wanted to get more money to kind of just make sure that we're able to expand in the next year if we can. But that makes so much sense to like have specific ways in which we can kind of have more fun with like the NPA and be more realistic for what folks kind of can't do. Because obviously, I mean, like we all kind of see the same group every month, right? So we all kind of know we're comfortable here, but most people are not here. So just kind of making sure that we are developing those kind of resources for folks. And that's a great point, Hannah. So we shall talk more about that. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the Riverside micro home project. The school commissioners are not on tonight. That's why they didn't give their updates. But Laurie and Mark, I believe you're both up.
Good evening. I'm Laurie Smith. For some reason, my video is not turning on right now, but it was a minute ago. So, hey, just see my name. I'm here with Mark Furnari and Steve Kreidel from GBA Architecture. I do have a set of slides to share if I can do screen sharing to give an update on what's gone on over the last 6 or 8 months since we were last here in updating and improving the 237 Riverside project.
You should be able to share your screen.
Okay, so here we go. And let me see if I can take it to the full screen mode. So this is a sketch rendering of the project. And What is being considered is a approximately 48 unit micro housing project on Riverside Avenue, just to the west of the car wash, between the car wash and the sewage treatment plant. The initial program that we presented last year was for almost 68 units. Subsequently, we've reduced it to make it more scale appropriate, even though 68 units are allowed by the zoning. The goal is to create a fossil-free, carbon-neutral, highly efficient workforce housing project that is in transportation corridor directly between Winooski and Burlington. There will be 48 350 square foot efficiency apartments, 5 645 square foot units with a separate bedroom, a street level lobby serving the residential levels above, 45 parking spaces, bicycle storage, community kitchen, laundry, with a connection to the back space, which is a beautiful connection to the Salmon Hole and the Winooski River, and potentially a recreational or path headed up to UVM. We've reduced the overall square footage of the project by almost 25%. And the idea is to provide high quality, reasonably affordable housing for single folks and young working professionals in the community, which seems to be a pretty high need. I'll go through the slides and am open to any questions as we go along. This map shows the site on Riverside Avenue, or orienting it to Burlington. This is a closer view of it. And then we will move into floor plans, site plan and floor plans of the project. This is the site with the car wash here, sewage treatment plant. This is 237 Riverside Avenue, and the adjoining property that's owned by Larkin will be incorporated into this project. This is a schematic view of the building, which is really broken up into 3 separate buildings to make it feel like small residential rather than a big, massive building, with canyons or corridors between each of the buildings that are public spaces that provide view corridor back towards the river. This is the first ground floor parking layout. First floor units. You can see there are common areas between, access down to the backyard and the very private sort of courtyard area that goes down to the river. Third floor spaces. And then the fourth floor spaces that are larger loft apartments with loft bedrooms above the living spaces. And this is a view of the lofts. There will be solar on site producing, if not all, very close to all the energy needs for the property. There will be no fossil fuels used on site. And here is a street view looking east on Riverside Avenue. And a view looking west on Riverside Avenue, with terraces for the upper apartments and these corridors and spaces in the front that are inviting to the public and trying to create open and friendly space for the community. Those are the slides. Mark Furnari may have something to add, and Steve is here as well if there are questions.
Tom, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, it seems like I'm raising my hand way too many times. But yeah, a couple quick questions. First, can I get a copy of the slides for the minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the second question I have is that it wasn't clear to me, but it looks like most of the units will not have any kitchen facilities, so the residents will be using a shared kitchen. Is that true?
No, they all have kitchens.
Oh.
You can't see it, but along this wall of each unit, this is a living room and this is a kitchen. There's a full kitchen in each one of these units.
Okay.
Yep. But there is a communal kitchen as well.
Okay, thanks.
I know, Karen, you have your hand raised, and then we'll go to Sophie.
Thank you. I've read multiple articles about the bank along there, and I did check to see, the last article, if your property, because I knew about this proposal, if you are in that area where they're worried about, and it's not just one person, there's been quite a few geologists worried about the sliding hillside there. How are you going to support this large project with that fault or whatever they're calling it there? But it does go quite a distance along there.
So Carolyn, I'd love to, if you're interested, walk the site with you sometime. If you take a look behind this property, you'll see that the topography is very different from almost anywhere else along the road. And actually behind this site, there is a historic Clovis Indian site that is many thousands of years old. So the stability of this area is very different from what's going on as you go further west on the road, or even as you go further east towards the Salmon Hole. And a lot of geotech work has already been done and will continue to be done. But there's actually a very beautiful gradual sloping area going down to the river that I'd love to share with you sometime.
Thank you.
Can I add something here, Laurie?
Go, Mark.
Yeah, Carolyn, your question is an excellent question. As the owner of the property for over 20 years, what I can tell you is that when we started to think about development in this area, the slope stability was on our minds. And we've done, as Laurie said, we've completed the geotechnical work, which was supportive of us continuing with the plan. And I think I walked the site with Dave Colley after the last meeting and stuff. And it's really important. The folks who lived in that building have been able to walk down to that site, have their canoes there. It's a very, very different than the area west of the sewage treatment facility. So I'd invite you to take a walk with us if you can, and we can show you in person what it's really about.
Okay, we'll go to Sophie, followed by Erhard, and then Fletcher.
Okay, the multi-use path that begins on Riverside at Barrett Street, are you continuing that? It's hard, I see you have a bike and walkers, but it doesn't really look at this angle. It doesn't look like it's a wide multi-use path.
The wide multi-use path continues right past this property and will continue to do so. And there is also a bus stop right at this property.
Thank you.
So it's looking to be very multimodal and to support alternate transportation from vehicles.
Okay, Erhard, you can go.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Laurie. Couple questions. One is, so I can't remember what the zoning is for this. I assume that you don't need any kind of zoning change for the density that you have proposed for the site and in combination with the slopes. Is that a fair assumption?
That's totally correct. In fact, the initial plans that we were working on were for 68 units Erhard, and that falls within the zoning, but it felt too dense for the space. And we tried to come up with something that really is appropriate for where it's situated.
And you said the number was down to 48. Was that it?
I believe it's 47.
47. Well, damn close. How are you? Well, two questions kind of folded into one. How are you complying with inclusionary zoning? What is the square footage of your micro apartments?
I will defer to Steve Kreidel for those. Steve, you there?
Yes, I'm here. This is Steve. So the square footage for the apartments on the second and third floors is around 330 square feet, 325, 330. And the ones on the top floors are larger. They're around 500 and 600. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the inclusionary, that is part of the process here. And ideally, we want to keep rents low enough it's not going to be an issue. That's one of the goals of the project. But we're at 35, or we are going to have to, or we will provide inclusionary housing as partly for a height bonus. So that is part of the design.
So approximately maybe 7 or 8 units would meet inclusionary requirements. I think that's the percentage, 15%.
It's actually going to be more than that. There's 48 units on the second and third floors, and there are 17 more units on the top floor. So we have more than that. We're going to have around 15, give or take.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 47 units total.
Yeah, I know. It's 24 on the second floor, 24 on the third floor, and there's 17 on that top 2 floors.
Sorry, so Erhard, I was wrong on that.
So what's the total number of units?
The total number is 65.
Oh, it is. Okay. So it's closer to what's permissible from zoning and density.
Yeah, a big thing we've done here is reduce the square footage that we had before by about 10,000 square feet from what we showed previously.
Gotcha. And I'm sure you're familiar with the inclusionary zoning. It was reformed and redesigned a couple of years ago. And one of the hot topics back then was square footage. So I think that's just as a heads up, that's something to pay attention to because, and I can't remember exactly where that ended up in the final analysis, but square footage, the small size of the units could be a problem for the inclusionary units. My last question it's similar to Sophie's. So having been involved in the creation of the Riverwalk down along the river many, many years ago, that was dependent on the property owners along Riverside Avenue that owned down to the embankment, providing easements to the Winooski, the Parks District. And so just question, do you intend to continue to honor those easements?
Do you want to answer that, Mark, or do you want me to?
No, it's a good question. I remember talking to the director of the Winooski Valley Park District, and we actually talked about it, the easements as they currently existed, and talked about expanding them, about a year and a half ago when we first started to put together the project. So the answer to your question there, Hart, and quickly is yes, we will continue to honor the easements, and actually we'll talk about how to improve them, because there's some work that needs to be done down by the trail.
And I'll jump in for a second, Erhard, and say that we've also talked quite a bit about trying to provide additional public access down through the property to that trail to provide more connectivity for the community to that amazing asset.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Fletcher, and then we'll end with Zariah for questions.
Yes, hello. I'm curious as to the timeline of this project as it currently stands.
Good question.
Do you want to take that, Mark?
Well, yeah, I think what we're doing right now, we've finished the third design phase right now, and what we're currently doing is looking at financing options. We're putting together the financing deck, how this is going to work. So we are when we finish that, we'll also initiate at the same time the beginning of the Act 250 review and the permitting process. And we have some work to do to get ready for both of those. So I would say it's going to take us a while. Lumber costs have come down a little bit. We're pleased about that. Building materials, the supply side is looking better. I mean, if you said to me short term, the shortest it could probably happen is probably a year and a half, about a year and a half from now, a year and a quarter to a year and a half. But we would like to time the opening of it to when it makes a good time to bring the units on the market.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And is it my turn? Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you for taking the concerns seriously on the site. I feel like a lot of the other people who have come before NPAs and the DRB have kind of poo-pooed those away. So just appreciate someone coming before us and saying, yeah, we're looking at it and we hear you. And so wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Well, just in response to that, I want to say our goal is to provide a sustainable long-term housing solution for the community. And if it's built on a site that's not suitable, that's not going to meet that goal. So we want to do everything we can to build something that's going to really stand the test of time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next up, we have Grace with the People for Police Accountability.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Pfeil, and I'm just here to kind of speak with you all on behalf of People for Police Accountability about community control of police. So I think I have about 15 minutes. I'm going to try to go through the information real quick, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end. And I'm just going to chat, and then I'll share my screen at the end with all of our contact information. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what community control of police is, what's in the actual proposal, and then where we are now in the campaign. And I really want to encourage all of you and folks who might be watching us at home on channel 317, if there are anybody, to reach out and just email us at any point if you have any questions. We would love to connect with you. And I can share our email at the end. So People for Police Accountability is a group of concerned community members, and we're organizing specifically around community control of police, which Zariah mentioned earlier. Community control of police is the creation of an independent community control board with diverse membership and disciplinary and investigatory powers over our police department. And our goal is to get community control of police on the ballot for the special election in November through the petition process. And hopefully, if we're able to collect all the signatures that we need, we'll all have the opportunity to vote on this in November. And so I'm sort of here to just make sure that if we do end up getting the opportunity to vote on this, that everyone has an opportunity to make the most informed vote possible. So if you're going to vote yes, we want that to be an informed yes. And if you're going to vote no, we want that to be an informed no, right? So community control of police is a proposal to change the city charter, which is basically like the constitution of our city, and to create an independent community control board with investigatory and disciplinary power over our police department. So currently, right now, if you experience unfair treatment or police violence or misconduct, you have to report that directly back to the police department, right? And they are tasked with investigating themselves. And there's very little transparency into the investigation and adjudication of complaints of misconduct. And the police chief is the only one who has the power to discipline or fire police officers. So even though we pay the police to do their job and we grant them special authorities, we don't actually have the ability to directly hold them accountable. We fund the police department with our tax dollars, and then we also have to pay for settlements and for buyouts of officers in use of force cases. But ultimately, none of us, not even city council, not even the mayor, can directly hold police officers accountable. So the community control board would be made up of, to the extent possible, folks who are most directly impacted by policing. So we're talking about BIPOC members of our community, we're talking about LGBTQ folks, and folks who have experienced addiction and houselessness and mental health issues. The board members would undergo extensive training, and then the board would also have an independent investigatory office. And that investigatory office would be in charge of receiving complaints and investigating complaints, and also creating better processes for us to be able to receive those complaints, right? And to really have that independent body who's in charge of that, I think is really important. The board would also have input into the hiring criteria for police officers and the police chief. They would review complaints and hold hearings. And then the board would also have the ability to discipline or remove police officers, including the chief. And then the board and its office are also going to be issuing regular public reports to allow for as much transparency as possible. So that was a lot of information. But I also just wanted to share 3 things with you that I think are really important to understand. So police officers would continue to have a right to due process. That right to due process is protected and maintained in this proposal. And the police department would still be able to investigate complaints that the board chooses not to take up. So that would be maybe lower level infractions, things pertaining to uniforms and violations of that nature. Another thing that's really important to note is that the Community Control Board and its office are only conducting investigations when there has been a complaint of misconduct, right? So they're not searching around for things to investigate. They're only investigating based on a complaint that they receive. Additionally, the Community Control Board would not replace the current police commission. We as a group feel that the police commission has an important role working with the police department to craft policies and directives and to have sort of an overall advisory view of the department. So we envision these 2 bodies, the police commission and then the community control board, existing alongside each other. And it's just really crucial that there be a body that is fully independent from the police department, that it can investigate and adjudicate discipline. So across the country, there's over 150 different models of police oversight in cities of all different sizes and demographics. And the Burlington model is based on existing community oversight models in part. And our community controlled police proposal is also directly aligning with the criteria for effective oversight of police that was created by the ACLU of Vermont. So that's those principles that the ACLU outlines, that's sort of directly what we started with. And so our proposal meets all of those criteria. Community control of police has had extensive input and support from community members, and we're supported by the ACLU of Vermont. We're also supported by the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, as well as local grassroots organizations, including the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, Migrant Justice, the Women's Freedom and Justice Initiative, and the Battery Park Movement. And this process of changing the city charter is actually something that was initiated by City Council, right? So Last summer, after the murder of George Floyd, we experienced one of the largest uprisings around racism and police violence in this country's history, and some of the largest protests and demonstrations around police violence that we've seen in Burlington. And in response to that, the City Council unanimously passed the Protesters and Public Safety Resolution and the Racial Justice through Economic and Criminal Justice Resolution. And so both of those resolutions tasked City Council with exploring public safety alternatives. And through the Protesters and Public Safety Resolution, City Council requested that the Charter Change Committee review options for who makes and reviews police disciplinary decisions. And as Councilor Hightower kind of alluded to earlier, the Community Control of Police Charter Change was passed by City Council on December 14th, but then was vetoed by Mayor Weinberger, which blocked community control of police from being on the ballot during the March election. So our goal now is to get community control of police on the ballot for the special election in November, and we're doing this through the petition process. So we're currently on our way to collecting about 2,000 signatures from registered voters in Burlington so that we all as a city can decide if this is something that we want to move forward with. So I'm going to share, I think I'm going to just share our website and our contact information so folks can learn more. There's a lot more information. We could go a lot more in depth. I'm going to try to do that if I can figure it out. And I'm happy to answer questions if I have time here.
Soraya, I see your hand is raised.
I just wanted to apologize to Grace. I clearly forgot that this was on the agenda and I did not mean to steal any of your thunder.
No worries at all. I think it was helpful that you brought that up, actually.
Are there any other questions? Jonathan, and then Jack, and then Tom.
Hi, thank you. Grace, I think this is all really interesting. I think it's a very, very important. I'm a little confused about the separate roles of a community control board and a commission. And I don't know, I mean, there's hundreds of ways you say across the country that this can be done. I guess I don't understand why some kind of innovation couldn't make one board, one commission that does policy as well as investigations. Maybe you can just help me clarify that.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I think the police commission is something that is a body that's actually existed for a number of years, and I think, in my personal opinion, I feel like this body was created, and it still feels a little bit unclear to me, like exactly what their role is, and they do a lot of work around crafting policy and helping to give feedback to the department, which is really important. I think we could just have the community control board and the investigative office. We could have both the police commission and the community control board. I also think that more oversight mechanisms are not a bad thing. And I think it can feel a little bit, maybe shocking isn't the right word, but I think going from having no oversight mechanisms to having multiple is very different than what we have now. I don't know if that exactly answers your question. In Chicago, they are currently, there's other cities that are going through this exact same process now. Chicago is the one city that I can think of that does have both some sort of community control board, and then they also have a police and fire commission as well that are combined. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about that more. I think that's a really great question.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm next, right, Anna? Yeah, I was just going to thank you, Grace, for coming here and presenting, and opening up the conversation and working on this, and look forward to engaging on it. And yeah, Jonathan's point, that was definitely a huge part of the conversation as we worked through this similar proposal at the council level. I think one of the most compelling things to me, and I'm still open to the possibility of trying to figure something out, but the reason I was pretty convinced by the separate function was because one of the main aspects of this oversight model is independence from the police department, and the current structure, the current police commission is very much embedded within the police department, which there are definitely benefits to that. And they collaborate directly and work directly with leadership at BPD to, adjust policy. But this function of having independent oversight, I think the independence is important. So maybe there is a way to get really creative and have one entity that does all of this at once. But that I found pretty compelling.
Yeah, thanks, Jack.
And then Tom, you're up.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation or the discussion here. I sort of have, following Jonathan's question, I don't really understand why we need two different entities. It seems like we could dissolve the police commission and put whatever their responsibilities are and then add it to the responsibilities you've defined and have just one entity to deal with both. It would certainly prevent conflicts between the two if the police commission says that police can use a lot of force and the community control of police say no, they can't. I don't know how you would resolve that. So I think having one board that would provide perhaps for some more consistency in how the police are managed.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. And I think the reason why I sort of include that part in my spiel, right, that we're envisioning them existing alongside each other is because of sort of what Jack said. We don't want to just transform the police commission into the community control board, right? Because we're starting with a body that already inherently is not fully independent. And so I think it does feel really important to create something totally new that would have, that would be independent and that would have investigatory and disciplinary power. And I think right now, they could exist alongside each other, especially if the roles were very clearly defined, because I think policy things like use of force policy is something that right now is only something that the police commission is working on in sort of this advisory capacity where they're able to help draft policies and then and give feedback on policies that the police department already has, and then be in conversation with the department about those policies. But I don't see why that could not all be within the scope of what the board is responsible for. So, yeah.
And then Jack and Zariah, are your hands raised again? I just see your hands are still up, so I want to make sure I get to both of you if so.
Yeah, mine was just to add a little bit more color to the which, because I think I also at the beginning started on the thing of like, could they be the same? And I do, just having seen how the police commission works with the police department, not just the embeddedness, but the collaborativeness. And I feel like if we were in a different moment in time, maybe this wouldn't be as much of a problem. Maybe it would be more like an HR function, which of course is within the organization all of the time. But like there's just a lot of defensiveness right now in the police department. And so to some extent, if you have a body that is supposed to be doing discipline, then the chances that you're going to have them turn around and work with that same body really closely on policy, if that is not a thing that we think is important in terms of like working really closely with that body to make policy, I think that's fine. But right now, there's still a high level of trust between the police commission and the police department that I think could be eroded very quickly if they were given oversight responsibility. And so I think it's a little bit of a question of, is that okay? Do you want the policymakers to not have that close relationship with the police department, is my sense of what would happen. And that's not one is better than the other. I think that's just the way that the police commission exists right now wouldn't have the same relationship.
Okay, and then Jack is going to be the last comment.
Sorry to go twice. So yeah, I just piggybacking off of that, but most folks who've raised this, the pitch has been to merge this work into the police commission. And I think for the reasons we've said, I don't think that that's a good idea. But what Tom just said of having this body be the body to do everything and essentially dissolve the police commission, that I think is an interesting idea, maybe worth exploring more, that I haven't heard explored too much at all. So I don't know. That's interesting. Maybe Zariah's heard more about that idea than I have. So
I think my last comment still stands regardless of what direction you go. It's hard to have both of those functions of a close relationship and a disciplinary body right now, regardless of how you set it up, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. And I really appreciate you all raising these questions, because I think this is part of the purpose of coming to these meetings, is just trying to get thoughts from folks and have these questions that we can continue to think about and figure out. But yeah, I think you know, what Zariah is saying is totally true. I think it is really important, at least right now, to have a body that has a level of trust with the police department and is able to have a really close working relationship with them that, you know, isn't adversarial. And, you know, ideally the community controlled police board would also not have an adversarial relationship with the police department. But yeah, thank you so much for letting me speak. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Grace. Next up is the DPW project update.
Hi, thank you for having us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, well, thanks for having us. We will try to be as quick as possible and hopefully leave time for questions for the group if you have any. We are here to talk a little bit about consolidated curbside collection. We'll also touch on the sidewalk study, which I know many of you are interested in, and we'll try to package that part of it in to the larger construction update that we're planning for the year and is already underway, including, I think, some things of note and interest for wards 1 and 8. I am joined by my colleagues, Lee Perry, the Division Director of Maintenance for DPW, and Madeline Suender, DPW Engineer. I think Senior Engineer Laura Wheelock has also joined us, so she might be here. To start, I'm going to turn it over to Lee Perry, and I'll share my screen so we can start the discussion on consolidated collection, and we'll move into sidewalks and construction.
Thanks, Rob. As Rob said, my name is Lee Perry. I'm the Division Director of Maintenance for DPW. So I oversee street maintenance, fleet maintenance, and our recycling program. And we'll talk a little about consolidated collection. I'll hit the wave tops on the slides so we can hopefully have some time to answer any questions that come up at the end. So consolidated collection, quick definition is, you know, using one hauler or entity to provide trash, recycling, and compost pickup. And we're basing it off of 1 to 4 residential units in the city of Burlington. Next slide, please. A little background. In 2018, City Council passed a resolution directing DPW to have a study conducted for consolidating the collection of trash, recycling, and compost. In that study, they state that nationwide, out of 461 cities and counties, it showed that 83% of these municipalities or communities consolidate their services under a variety of scenarios, whether it's franchise, municipal, or a hybrid option.
the consultant also found that the likely benefits would be, environmental benefits with the reduction of truck traffic, reduce up to 2/3 of vehicle miles traveled in the city. Economic benefits would be, residents would receive weekly collection of all 3 waste streams for about what they pay right now for trash and recycling. And quality of life with the reduction of truck traffic within these residential neighborhoods, less noise, less pollution, less damage to the infrastructure, meaning our roads. So those are some of the benefits we could see from consolidating collection. And possible scenarios, as a city, we need to decide if, should we consolidate services or not? And if yes, the options could be consolidating as franchised, which would be putting it out to bid to private haulers where they would bid on districts or franchise zones. Or the other option is a municipal option where the city provides the services, which would, we'd be creating another division similar to our recycling, but we would capture all 3 waste streams, recycling, trash, and compost. And here's a cost comparison of the franchise model and municipal model. So we did 3 different options, one being a 0% opt-out where we would not have any residential units opting out, a 15% and a 25% opt-out. So as you can see in the monthly cost scale, at the 0% opt-out, we're fairly close with a franchise model. And as you decrease participation in the service, our price increases greater than what a franchise model would be. And that would be due to having to build a new building to house this division, additional capital, trucks, carts, etc. And next step, so we're evaluating all the scenarios and we're going to present our recommendation for consideration at the upcoming commission meeting, which is this June 16th, next week. You can check the agenda there. And then the following week, we'll be presenting to the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee meeting. We've been to them 2 or 3 times so far. And then DPW Commission and 2 may choose to make a motion or different motions supporting either our recommendation or an alternative recommendation. And then, if the council decides to advance consolidated collection, depending on which scenario it is, it could take approximately 3+ years, depending on the model. And either way, it's, imperative we take our time in implementing this and doing it right. So that's the next steps, and any feedback is welcome. You can visit the link provided for background materials. You can find the franchised study that our consultant GBB did. Public comments available. And email DPW Communications with any feedback, or you can email me directly or call me with any questions and any information I can provide you. If I can, I will. Hopefully answer any of your questions.
Okay, Tom, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, Hailey, can I get a copy or better yet, a pointer to your presentation so I can put it in the minutes?
Yes, Rob can take care of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think on your first slide, does this apply to only to buildings with 4 units or more, or 4 units or less?
1 to 4 residential units. So that would be 4 or less.
Okay.
Not commercial properties or anything beyond that.
And when you say opt out, that means that.
So we would give residents the chance to opt out and self-haul if they want to go to one of the drop-off centers that's located around the city, South Burlington, Williston, Essex. Obviously, the Burlington dock is not at full service right now. They're only accepting food scraps right now. So that would be the opt-out option.
Okay.
Okay, Karen, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. So I guess this has gone on a long time and I know, but does this mean the city is going to be doing this, or is Gothiers or somebody like that? You mentioned having to build a new building for trucks or whatever.
Yeah, so depending on, which way the council decides they want to go, whether it's a franchise model or strictly a municipal model or some kind of hybrid model. If it were a municipal model, DPW would have to, it's an additional 13 to 14 employees, additional employees to take on. We already have our recycling employees, so we'd be adding employees to do the trash and compost pickup, customer service, billing, public outreach, manager, build a building. We reach capacity at 645 Pine Street. We don't have any more room for employees or more vehicles. So we would have to procure property, build a new building to house this division.
Okay, so then that would take a lot longer than if, I guess my understanding before, when, again, this has been discussed for years, was that instead of Myers coming on a street and Gothiers and Duffy's and all those, they were going to divide the city so that Gothiers had one section. And so we didn't put them out of business, but we stopped having 4 trucks go down our block, things like that.
That would be the franchise model.
Yep.
So that would be where the city would have, the local haulers. There's Casella, Myers, Gothier, Duffy's, bid on districts,
right,
to collect those 3 waste streams. So that's what you were understanding.
Right. And then that could at least be done more quickly, because we've really put this off for so long that seems like a quicker way.
That would be more on the 3-year side of the 3+, because you still need to give all these haulers, maybe the bigger haulers can accommodate it, but the smaller haulers, if they win districts, they might have to get more trucks, get more employees. So there has to be that transition period. Okay. Contracts, RFPs have to be drawn up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other hand raised. So, Zariah, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, just one question and then a comment, which is one, did the franchise versus city run model, did you like the cost? Did that include like the cost of, it seemed like the city would have to increase their staffing anyways, just to run all of the RFP processes and bidding and whatever.
Yeah, so we did budget $50,000 for a consultant to do that implementation period.
Okay. And there's no like annual cost in terms of rebidding or something like that. It's on a much longer scale.
Correct. It would be, if it was a franchise model, it'd be at least a 7-year contract.
Okay.
That way, they can get a return on investment with their vehicles, similar to what we do with our recycling trucks on a 7-year rotation.
Okay. And then this is just a comment more for the steering committee hopefully our NPA will grow and eventually we'll have a whole bunch of members. But I think it would be cool as departments give presentations and stuff, if there was just a way to like quickly like do a poll or something like that from like people, like everybody in the audience, just to get an understanding of like what people think about it. I don't know how that would be implemented in person, so maybe it's too difficult of a request, but I think for us, it's really nice to actually hear what you all are thinking, and not just questions, but us as city councilors and the department probably.
Yeah, and I encourage, Rob does a great deal of public outreach and prior to these meetings, so we encourage everyone to show up at these meetings if they can. and participate in them. And, if you can get the word out in your neighborhoods about these meetings, that'd be helpful too, because it's a big decision.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands.
Can I talk?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't see that.
It's okay. Just a quick comment that I'm very excited about the possibility of the consolidated pickup going forward. Without much knowledge, I think I'd be real excited about the city doing the work. I'm sure that's not a popular option, and the blowback from the private haulers, I know is going to be immense. But again, without a whole lot of information, although I did attend years ago CSWD work on consolidation, and so again, of course, anyway, I'm very excited about the prospect. Either way it goes, I'll be happy, I believe. Thanks for the work.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. And you're correct. This was brought up back in 2009 with Chittenden Solid Waste District, trying to get consolidated collection going. And they did a pretty comprehensive study. It lasted until 2014, but there just was no buy-in with the haulers, and they couldn't find a common ground. So they felt it easier to do it by community rather than countywide. So that's, kind of where we're at right now.
Again, thank you.
Yep.
Just wanted to repeat myself about really appreciating the work that you've done and looking forward to some results, like, as you say, 3 to 5 years, and the community work that goes in the meanwhile.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I see Jason, you have your hand raised.
Yep. Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. I'm a person that would be under that opt-out, and that's because I actually try to consolidate my waste stream so that so little it doesn't actually make sense for me to pay for a hauler to come to my house. And what sort of incentive, or what can we do to get people to actually reduce their waste stream to that level that it's easy to drop it off, or you can have it for a long period of time. Because I currently would make no financial sense for me to sign up for a hauler. Yeah.
This is, we're at our conceptual budget right now, and our service levels that you saw in the 0%, 15, 25% opt out. Once we get a decision on which way we're going to go, that's when we'll really narrow down and hammer down what our service levels will be, whether it's every other week trash, every other week recycling. Being in the recycling right now and having seen it, every other week recycling in our community right now, I don't see that happening just with the tonnages that we're collecting right now. We're 28 tons a month above what we averaged last fiscal year. I'm assuming because of the pandemic and everybody's home and Amazon, it's a lot of cardboard. So we'll get different service levels other than those options that we had listed once we get it narrowed down to what kind of model we're going to go with.
Okay. Any last questions?
If I can just clarify my point that I forgot to say, just tying it together, that I believe DPW does a pretty outstanding job with the recycling. So I think that's part of my concept with wanting to think seriously about having them do it all. Just based on DPW's track record with the recycling, I think is just pretty wonderful. I don't expect we'll end up there, but I'd certainly like to put my voice towards that eventuality if the community wants that. Thanks again.
Well, thank you. I will pass that on to our recycling guys. I'm sure they would appreciate hearing that.
Okay, last call for questions, and then I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan. Okay, Jonathan, all you now.
Should we jump to the sidewalk section, which I know was a request of the steering committee? We can skip the other things if that makes sense for you and Jonathan and the steering committee.
Yeah, Rob, I think we should jump to the sidewalks. But before we do, Zariah, I really like your idea. Could we does everybody know how to raise their hands? If everybody knows how to raise their hands, then we could, if we can take the slides off, that might help. If everybody can raise their hands, maybe we could just have a quick poll like Zariah suggested folks who think maybe the city should do this, or folks who prefer franchise. So if I don't know how to ask if people need instruction. If you click on the participants button, you'll see a list of all the participants, and at the bottom right it says raise hand.
Hey, Jonathan, I think you're going to have 3 options, because I think you're going to have to add the opt-out.
Okay, but the opt-out, even opt-outers like Cyril might have an opinion, right? So
folks can opt out under either model, though.
Right.
Whether it's municipal or franchise, there's still the opportunity.
Right.
Oh, I thought opt-out was only being considered. It wasn't necessarily a default.
So if we could just have a show of hands of folks who think the municipal direction is the right way to go, could just raise your hands. And Tom, you want to count them?
I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
I'm not voting, folks. Please don't count me. I'm abstaining. I'm not ready to make a decision on this.
So we have 9.
9. Okay. Could you lower your hands? And could folks who might prefer a franchise solution raise their hands?
I'm also not voting like Earhart. I don't feel like I know enough to really know what I would like.
Count 1.
Okay. So there's a very anecdotal set of data. And thank you for doing that. And I think in person we can do it easy with show of hands, but we could do it easy this way too. And thanks, Zariah. It's a great thing. We should have been doing this all along.
Hey, Jonathan, I don't know if our version of Zoom has this function, but Zoom does allow people, to it allows for polling through little drop down menus, and I think my suggestion is to try and get a larger sampling at successive NPAs possibly. And I don't know, it just seems like the city should be doing more outreach on this. This is a pretty major thing. I know it's not the first time it's being discussed, but frankly, like Karen said, I just don't know where I stand on this exactly. And I think a lot more information needs to be put out there. And I think, all the NPAs should be polling more than just anecdotally on this.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I think, I suspect a decision is going to be made before the next meeting, next NPA meeting, but I appreciate you doing that. And then I'll hand it back to you, Hannah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're going on to sidewalks now.
Yeah, we'll jump right into that. I'll reshare my screen, and then I will turn it back over to a couple of my colleagues here. I did just want to locate us in this discussion about sidewalks, which is we are now kind of at the end of our 2016 bond funding under the Sustainable Infrastructure Plan. A lot of progress on infrastructure has been made over these 5 years. With the funding that we are now pretty much at the end run of, which includes a tripled sidewalk reconstruction, nearly 20% of the city paved, and a real proactive emphasis on water main repairs. Usually we go into greater detail on those. I'm not going to do that here for the benefit of everybody and the time. I do think it's important before we jump right into sidewalks to talk a little bit about that big picture very quickly, which is we're at the end of that original pot of funding that was allocated by the voters in 2016. To sustain the level of work we've made. Some people are happy with our work. Some people think we always need to do more. We generally would agree with that. But to sustain what we have done over the last 4 years, more funding will be necessary. Mayor and council recently did allocate more funding for sidewalks for this year, which will allow us to once again triple the rebuilding of sidewalks that we normally do, which is great news for the short term. It's a community conversation, as we say here, that will evolve. So let us know, let your counselors know where you want to take funding in the future for infrastructure. With all that said, we are pursuing as many projects as possible, leveraging other kinds of funding as well like a major project we have in the South End, which we're happy to talk more about for folks who commute, who may be impacted by the Shelburne Roundabout project, but we're always looking to leverage state and federal money to make improvements in the city. So with that said, I know sidewalks was a main topic of interest for us coming today. So we've rebuilt about 13 miles over the last 4 years. Sidewalks tend to have a 40-year life cycle. And so our recent construction trends really put us on a sustainable schedule of repair and replacement of sidewalks. But again, that's with the kind of additional allocation of funds that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. Did just want to briefly share a list of the sidewalks in wards 1 and 8 that we will be tackling this year. These are typically smaller stretches between, I think I looked at the chart, 18 and 150 linear feet. Some of these streets you see in front of you will be those 18-foot segments. Some will be a little bit longer. Some of these streets will have multiple segments. You can kind of see the snapshot on the right there. We have a link we'll share where you can kind of drill into exactly what segments of what streets we're doing. And also, if there is time and you want to ask, we certainly have the right folks to talk about that on this call. But I'm going to turn it over now to Madeline Suender, DPW engineer, and senior engineer Laura Wheelock to talk a little bit about the sidewalk assessment inventory that we're currently undertaking to look at the entire network of sidewalks.
Hi, everyone. So I'll just give you a very quick overview of this effort that we are currently undergoing to get the entire city sidewalk network inventoried based on all the repairs that need to be made. So the last inventory that was done on the sidewalk was completed in 2014. It's recommended that this happen approximately every 5 years. So we're coming up on 6 years, and we've partnered with Bureau Veritas to do all the data collection. And then RSG will be doing the post-processing and packaging of all the data to get it in a more user-friendly and clean layout. So the scope of work that Bureau Veritas is currently undergoing is the collection of all the discrepancies throughout the city's sidewalk network. You can see this picture here. They have this machine that they are pushing across all of the sidewalks, and within that machine, there's various sensors that can calculate the roughness, cross slope, change in level, so if there's any tripping hazards, and other various ADA deficiencies. So ultimately, this will be packaged in a GIS map that will essentially score all of the sidewalk segments. So they're collecting data every 10 feet. So we'll have a very complete and updated inventory. And then the next slide has the timeline for this. So Bureau Veritas estimated that this will take roughly 2 weeks for them to do all of the data collection. So they were anticipating starting this week. So by the end of June, they'll have data collection completed, and then they'll have to do some post-processing, and DPW will have to review and work with their staff to just make sure the end product that they send to us is complete and clean. And then from there, we will work with RSG, and they will help us again, do some post-processing of the data to get it ready to be used for future work planning, as well as make it a bit more outward facing and give us some helpful and high level overview and summary charts and tables and just different metrics that we can share and update and more easily provide to the public. So it'll be a bit more interactive in that way. That's pretty much the update I had. So happy to answer any questions. And if Laura has anything to add.
Caitlin, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of work is planned for adding any additional sidewalks. Like in our neighborhood, I feel like the top section of Archibald is a section that I would like to walk a lot. It's a useful section, but doesn't have a sidewalk and has a pretty dangerous curve on it where it meets up with Prospect. So that's a specific question, but also asking generally about the addition of sidewalks in places where there's none.
Yep, that's a great question. The effort that's ongoing right now will actually use the tools that we basically sort our sidewalks into their prioritizations to provide us our sidewalk gaps, and take the metrics that we use for anticipated activity based on neighborhood uses, destinations, attractions, the neighborhoods that tend to walk more, the neighborhoods that are disconnected. They're going to apply that over the top of the gaps and give us a way to prioritize where we should focus in filling our existing network with new sidewalks.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Karen, I see your hand is raised.
Yes. Can you please tell me the cost to the city to hire out the Bureau Veritas and the other one? Please.
The two consultants, I believe, come in around 80,000 total, which is about 50,000 less than we paid back in 2014.
Okay. Yeah, it is less. I always feel, and I heard you're going to hire somebody $50,000, pay someone $50,000. This is DPW also for the trash thing. We have so many fine engineers on board, so many more than we've ever had before. I'm always kind of amazed that we have to keep also hiring consultants. Is there any, it's just out of your leagues to do that kind of stuff? Or why are we always, we have a really big budget on consultants, correct?
This coming fiscal year doesn't have the same previous consultant line item. This work specifically, the tool that they use, we've searched the country, and really the machinery to do an empirical collection of the sidewalks deficiencies, it doesn't exist in the Northeast. There's no firms that have this. The other consultant, RSG, they're really very focused in being able to review data, metrics, package it so that it is presentation worthy. The engineers that DPW currently has, we're highway engineers, we're bridge engineers, wastewater engineers. Data analytics is not our specialty.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we will end with Jason.
Yep. So I'd like to say I'm glad you're taking an inventory of everything and trying to get an understanding of the condition in all the places. That's something that's, I think a lot of data is needed for that because there's so many variations all over those sidewalks. But when applying the criteria, Burlington's a very unique city, not like any other city. And who is the person determining what a high usage area is, a low usage area is, and the importance of that? There's hundreds of miles of sidewalks here, and I don't think an outside consultant understands the impact of different zones and areas and the usages. And I feel like downtown will get prioritized 100% because of business and money and income, but the neighborhoods where people live and walk and have real issues get left behind. And Archibald, I've been asking for that for 21 years. Another one is Mill Street right at the bridge. There's parking down both sides. There's no way to get there. There's businesses, all sorts of stuff going on. There's a high traffic area and there's nothing there. And so I hope that you really take into account the prioritization of the different areas in a correct manner for what's appropriate for the city. That said, today I was actually walking downtown in front of April Cornell on Battery Street, and somehow I never noticed this before, but there is no sidewalk there. It's just a parking lot. People park straight across, and I could not get through. I had to go out into Battery Street to get around it with traffic. And how does the city not have a right of way there, and how is that not prioritized? Honestly, I don't really walk there that often. I usually bike or I'm somewhere else, but I hope those main areas get taken care of for the most dollar for our, best bang for our buck, I guess, that, those areas really need some work.
Yep. Thanks, Jason. You have a lot of great points there. The prioritization actually will start with our effort from our 2014 analysis. And that prioritization built upon an effort from 2009. The activity score, as we refer to it, is all based on staff's input. We selected the criteria, the distance from a park, the score that it would get. If it's a retirement home, if it's a school, if it's a playground, even the different types of parks and the amenities that they offer. Some of the largest parks aren't necessarily the highest destinations for a neighborhood that walks. So it is city staff that is guiding that criteria. You make a lot of great points also about some of our unique sidewalk conditions and the obstructions, which is a ADA deficiency that can occur.
And I would also mention that C-Click Fix has been very good for when I report stuff to get stuff back. Sometimes it gets ignored, but I know that you don't actually data mine C-Click Fix. And I think there's a treasure trove of information on hotspots that are areas that get reported all the time, and they don't necessarily, no one looks at that data going backwards and figures out maybe some prioritization. So I'd love to see C-Click Fix get some real data analyzation on it.
Jason, you raised a really good point, and it's, I think, a really key time that you raised that. The city has recently brought forward and had approved an asset management plan, which is essentially going to be able to capture the data around the city on, our asset side, on our maintenance schedule for things like sidewalks, paving, including in-house city equipment like our trucks. When are they maintained? When are they scheduled for maintenance? It's going to allow us to capture a whole trove of data that we may have right now in different buckets with less kind of utility because of how the data is captured. This system that we're kind of training on right now, we've interviewed other cities. We did look at a couple different vendors. It's going to take at least part of the place of C-Click Fix on the back end for us. Eventually, it may even replace C-Click Fix as a public portal. But essentially what you're suggesting we do is something we try to do with C-Click Fix. To your point, it's not as intuitive as we would want it to be. So we're actually undertaking a fairly comprehensive approach to this very thing right now. It's called essentially called the Asset Management Program that the city multi-department initiative really being led, I think, by DPW to look at our assets, to look at our data, to look at our preventative and proactive repairs and maintenance, and really dig into this data and have, I think, a more assertive, more proactive schedule for these things. It's going to allow us to look at when things have been repaired, the material used. We're really hoping that this is going to get us to the really well into the 21st century on, how we kind of holistically look at city assets. So it's a great point.
Yeah, and I think your residents are your best asset to tell you where there's deficiencies. People that deal with it every day, they're your best asset.
Agreed.
All right. I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you all for coming tonight. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, folks. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for staying through.
Good night.